What a day. Thank you very much indeed, everybody who made today possible. I think it's been, from my perspective, as somebody who's been working in this area for some years, really exciting, just fabulous. And the style with which Bob and the writers of the papers and then others have just engaged and exchanged is brilliant. I'd like to draw on some of the words and ideas that came out of the presentations today. First of all, I'd like to focus on 5 different areas. I'm just looking at the body language, actually. There's a bit of tiredness in the room. Oof. Do you remember what it was like at medical school or whatever other university you went to when you had these lectures that went on? And nowadays we have distractions like cell phones. We can pretend we're tweeting, but we're actually playing solitaire or something like that. 5 areas. 1, knowledge, evidence, framing, all that stuff, the stuff that we've been discussing today. Secondly, power, governance, duties and commitment. What those who are in power have responsibility to do. Some of it very clearly set out in moral codes and in human rights law. Thirdly, capacity and cash, i.e. people, and the money that will enable them to work and the systems that will enable them to do stuff. 4, processes and actors, ways of bringing different groups of people together. And 5, results and accountability. In today's discussions, we have focused, in my view, in many ways on these 5 different areas. They're totally interlinked, but I think it's worth also particularly drawing on the words of Feroe, Andrew, Sandra, and Anna this afternoon to try to pick them apart a bit and think, what has this fantastic second series helped us to think about and focus on in these different areas? If I start with the knowledge, evidence, framing bucket, I'd like to suggest that the second series really has, as Anna's already said, given us a huge amount to work on in terms of rethinking how nutrition as an issue is handled in just about every domain. And we're not just talking about shortage, we're talking about overconsumption or excess or other terminology. But the knowledge and evidence is coming strong and new, and the framing is different. And what do I personally think has become most profound about the framing? The issue is becoming more and more framed in terms of equity and social justice. And it's possible now to refer to poor nutrition as an injustice, and to any effort to try to perhaps avoid tackling poor nutrition as actually a scandalous and unacceptable act. And that injustice associated with poor nutrition denies individuals and societies of opportunities that are key to enabling them to have better lives. It would be just like insisting that a whole community of people halve their agricultural productivity or halve their cash income or attend half the school that others attend. If you insist that people have early lives that are poorly nourished, you are depriving them, you are committing an injustice. So therefore we can't just look at nutrition as a life or death issue. It is an issue of social justice, it is an issue of equity, and as Sean said very clearly, it's an issue for outrage. Number 2, and it's kind of linked. What does this mean for power, people in power, for people in government, for people with duties, for duty bearers as they're called in human rights language? And the answer is they really have to get themselves a bit more together. And what Pharaoh did in his presentation, as first discussed, was show us just what is happening in the government of Ethiopia. And I've had the honor of working closely with him now for some years, watching this happen. And you see, as well as trying now to get much better coverage and impact of the specific interventions, Pharaoh and the people he's working with in Ethiopia are saying, we now need to ask questions about whether or not government policies, plans, and their execution are sensitive to the nutritional challenges that people face. Are women able to access the foods they need in local markets that are necessary for ensuring that their children have nutritious diets? Are the water and sanitation programs actually providing the kinds of water and sanitation that has meaning and relevance to women with small children who've got diarrhea for a third to half of the time and who find maintaining a hygienic environment incredibly difficult? Are the conditions under which women are having their children and then looking after them conducive to them being able to breastfeed? Asked in this way, the questions about the role of government and the role of people in power change a bit and become much more questions to do with whether or not power is being used properly, whether or not government is responding to the interests of the people in the face of this grotesque nutritional injustice that is occurring in our world today. And that's where all of us now, empowered with Lancet 2, need to be more energetic in talking to those with power about the kind of commitments that they as leaders are making to address nutritional injustices through direct interventions, through nutrition-sensitive government policies, and through an enabling environment that truly values the life and well-being and opportunity of small children and of women, whether they are rich or poor, equally. Thirdly, I do think we are reprofiling notions of capacity and notions of investment. I don't think we've got there yet, but I think Lancet 2 will help us. You need a different kind of person with different kinds of skills to actually participate in the interactions that occur in a national government or in a local government to do with ensuring access to nutrition-sensitive policies that bring benefits to people from, for example, a medical doctor like myself, or from a traditional nutritionist who's schooled in the arts of dieting, or from dietary medicine, or from an agricultural economist who's schooled in how you get the most out of every hectare of land or every cubic 10 litres of water. This skill, the sets of skills that are needed to work in this way, again using some of the examples from the discussions, but particularly what Sandra said, people need to have a great mix of skills to operate in this area, and these are new kinds of skills. And they're not skills that necessarily are well taught at the moment. The capacity needs to be developed, and it needs cash, and it needs consistent cash. So this is a tricky area, but perhaps that's a subject for the next Lancet series. Fourthly, processes and actors. Well, the real shift that I believe has taken place, that was pointed out by several of the speakers, both in the papers and in the panel, is that there is an intense civil society engagement at all levels in issues around nutritional justice globally right now. That's how stuff changes. That's how there's a shift. When you get really well articulated demands, sometimes uncomfortably articulated, put in the face of those with power to say, where is what you promised? Where is what you're supposed to deliver? Where is what the Lancet says people need? Why is it not there? What are you going to do about it? That capacity to engage civil society and to have different parts of civil society participating in accountability is key to continuing the shift from government being responsible for delivering things to people to government ensuring that people can access what they need for equity of opportunity and also for social justice. But it's not just civil society in terms of voluntary organisations. It's consumer groups, it's farmer organisations, and yes, it is enterprises. Enterprises are on the inside. If they're allowed to get away with not focusing on these issues of responsibility and on the issues, and on the duties that come as a result of the power that they have, then they're being let off the hook. So there is no case at all for excluding businesses from the discourse on the enabling environment or on nutrition sensitivity, and increasingly they want to be there as part of their common business practice. And then other actors are also critically important to include inside the party. They are the research community. Science is part of the solution. They are also international organizations, foundations, and I believe that there will be more and more actors who should be part of this. And then the processes for engaging these actors are key, and those perhaps are what we are finding to be particularly challenging within the Sun movement, having established the kind of big tent that several people have referred to. How do you then create within that tent the systems through which different groups of actors can contribute to good results? And then lastly, fifth point, results and accountability, been a big focus, and I think everybody has been very clear that it is vital that we continue collectively to focus on results and achieving result and accountability for those results. So there is an increasingly exciting process underway. It's not just in nutrition. I think Richard is right to be continuing to refer to one of the other great areas of collective action on every woman, every child. It's the way in which health and development is going in so many fields that we're shifting away from sectors and disciplines to what some of us are referring to as the reality sector, what makes real sense to people, what they need to be able to have greater autonomy and better outcomes, so that they become the center of attention, and the rest of us have to organize ourselves so that we respond to their needs. Now, the concept of a scale-up nutrition movement came because our Secretary General said to several of us, that's Ban Ki-moon of the United Nations, I would like it to be possible that in the areas of food security and nutrition, that there can be better opportunities to bring together lots of different groups working together with trust, with shared results, and he continuously said with mutual accountability. And it was his idea that we should put, with very great care, national governments or countries at the center of any new effort for nutrition and try to organize others around them in networks of support with a very broad and indeed quite soft system for trying to ensure that it's held together through a group of senior citizens from different stakeholder groups, trying to ensure that the multiple efforts move in a concerted way. I think that to some extent that came from his experience of the Republic of Korea in the 1950s, when it was an exceedingly poor country and seen by many to be a country with very little hope of emerging from extreme underdevelopment. Our own Secretary General himself often went for days with only one meal a day, and that itself not very nutritious. Had to walk 2 hours to school, often without shoes, or shoes that were basically holes rather than shoes. And in his country, much of the recovery was due to the simultaneous engagement of lots of different stakeholders with an overarching framework, but lots of actors working together within that framework to try to transform the conditions under which people live, with full ownership of the people and accountability to the people. Well, this movement has evolved, and I think that there are others like it, but all I would like to say as I close my remarks is that this movement is you, all of you. It's hundreds, perhaps thousands of other individuals and organizations all over the world. It's 40 countries that have committed to scaling up nutrition and have committed also to results. It's all of the United Nations system and the World Bank and many regional banks. It's many companies, lots of civil society, many of whom will be active, particularly tomorrow, in Hyde Park and other places. And most of all, it's the people for whom this effort is, on whom it's focused. It's not owned or led by any individual. It's collectively led, it's collectively run, and it's my privilege to be part of it. And what we've seen in these 4 papers is going to contribute hugely to the effort of this movement and to those of us who work within the movement to try to make sure that over the next 5 years we will see sustained results. To Richard Horton, yeah, there were some challenges. I don't think that that whole process worked quite as well as it did, but it stung me a lot into thinking about what we're all trying to do. And I think it was back to that time when I was working in WHO and had those discussions with you that I learnt about your vision, and then I watched it evolve. And I'd like just personally to pay a little tribute to you in front of everybody here. You're not just the editor of a prestigious medical journal. You're a kind of wizard who casts spells, and I think one of the spells you've cast has had a big influence on many of us who are part of this scale-up nutrition movement. We wouldn't be where we were if it hadn't been for you, for Bob, and all the many people who did Lancet One 2008. Thanks for the extra energy.
Okay, that's very, very sweet, David, actually, and very generous of you to say those words. Let me invite all of our speakers and panelists up to the front now, because we have an opportunity for a little discussion. So can I invite David and Ferru and Andrew and Sandra and Anna to come and sit on these chairs? Before we start getting too complacent about ourselves, anybody here subscribe to a magazine called Red Pepper? Well, I do, and the article in the latest issue of Red Pepper isn't very kind to you or to I. It is, so let me tell you, it is a critique of the IF campaign, and the title of the article is Not Making a Movement. And what this article does is to dissect what we're all discussing today and saying we are covering up the truth of what's taking place in global nutrition. And here are the charges against us: that we have completely sidelined the Global South in our consultations and discussions around nutrition and scale-up of nutrition, number one. Number two, that we have created a collusive relationship with neoliberal governments. Number three, that non-governmental organizations that used to speak truth to power are more concerned at having a seat at the table of power and no longer speak truth to power, and we need to speak truth to them. And fourth, that there is a corporate takeover of agriculture in Africa that we are completely silent about. And finally, and this is what War on Want has said about the IF campaign, that it's not challenging to power. What the IF campaign is about, they say, is that it is grounded in the is that it should be grounded in the principles of food sovereignty, and it's not, and that what this entire effort that we've been talking about today and tomorrow and at the weekend is about is it's being planned, and I quote, with the aid agencies to use the IF campaign to promote the Prime Minister, David Cameron, as a leader on the global stage. Now, I don't know whether any of those 5 charges against us are completely accurate, but let's be aware, before we get too complacent, that there might be issues that we need to address which are uncomfortable and which might disrupt some of the equilibrium that we've been moving towards as the afternoon's discussion has been going on. I'd like to try and structure the next 40 minutes or so in 3 ways, if I may. I'd like to try and focus on opportunities first, and then I'd like to focus on obstacles, and then conclude with actions. So in terms of opportunities, we've heard many opportunities mentioned over the course of the day. Adolescence, integration, nutrition, somebody mentioned, the private sector, alliances with other dimensions of global health, such as newborn movement and non-communicable diseases. So what I'd like to try and get a discussion going with the audience and the panel is, what are the best opportunities that we need to try and seize in the coming years? So let's start up there, please.
I think my question is mainly based on the presentation we heard from Professor Andrew Dodd. Now, let me explain very brief context why I'm asking this question. So I'm Dr. Kremlin Wickramasinghe from Department of Public Health, University of Oxford. We all heard how useful the Lancet 28 nutrition series was. I completely agree, and it was very useful to frame my issue. Just give you one example how sometimes I have personally found it as an obstacle to create innovative programs in countries. So one example, we had a opportunity to create a program to look at how health in all policies or how different sectors can work together to achieve health outcomes. We selected nutrition because we thought that's a good sector to bring all the sectors together. And we thought the most difficult thing would be to get non-health people involved in this. So we went and asked agriculture people, rural development, home gardening, microcredit programs, do you want to get involved in a nutrition promotion program? Surprisingly, they all said yes. When we went to the nutrition project, nutrition experts in a country, in local areas, they said, look, Lancet Nutrition Series has very clearly published what are the evidence, what are the actions which has evidence which works. The things you are talking about, home gardening, microcredit programs, has little evidence or lack of evidence. We only focus on the list that Lancet has provided. If you have money, invest it for fortification or supplementation, not on this. So, but we didn't have money for nutrition promotion. We had money for this multi-sectoral action. So my question is, we heard this issue that lack of evidence of impact is not evidence of lack of impact. But if you leave it for interpretation at that level, that will create a issue, the relationship issue with those local health experts. If I try to tell him that your interpretation is wrong, that's going to destroy my relationship and I will not be able to work with them. So rather than leave it to interpret at that level, can Lancet be brave and move a little bit forward from the evidence and publish a list that you believe, based on Professor Howard's model or other things, as recommended list of actions, but giving the equal weightings. If you give second-class treatment saying these could be interesting or useful, they will drop it. And can Lancet take that? Thank you.
We'll treat that as an opportunity, and we'll come back to that moment. So, Francesco. And then...
Thank you. Francesco Branca from WHO. Opportunities. I think we have three. And I'm really grateful for Lancet for having created some of these opportunities. So first opportunity is the alignment in the nutrition community. It has been created by this common vision about the problem, about the size of the problem. We have a common voice about the nutrition statistics, the numbers. That's the first thing. We have a common view about where we have to go. We have common targets which we all have recognized. I think we have a common understanding of the guidance that we have to do to address the issue. And I'm very pleased to see that there's full alignment between the scientific community and the papers in the Lancet and what, for example, WHO is giving to its member states. We had an assembly last year. Yesterday we published sort of a compendium of the WHO guidance. We've been working together, of course, with all the experts, and we are very pleased that there's full consistency. Thank you. The second opportunity is really the fact that there is an understanding now of the breadth of the nutrition problems. And we're starting to really establish the link with the non-communicable disease. And again, last week the Assembly agreed on a plan to address non-communicable diseases, and diet and nutrition there is very prominent. I think paper one has put overweight on the agenda of the nutrition community, because we really saw a divide between the NCD community and the nutrition community, and that divide is starting to be eliminated. And I think also paper 2 is highlighting how we're perhaps having some problems in understanding what exactly needs to be done, but we're certainly moving in the correct direction. Still, countries do not address the double burden. That's also something which has been found in a survey, and particularly African countries. But the fact that we put that on the map will help filling that gap. And the third opportunity is the fact that we understand the importance of comprehensive guidance. Now, perhaps we have clear guidance on direct nutrition interventions. Where does the guidance on nutrition on nutrition-sensitive development come from? We would need perhaps the UN General Assembly to address it in a comprehensive way, just beyond the individual sectors. And I think the concept of looking at plausibility is going to be very important. This is an approach which can be followed in a policy document where somehow we take an approach which is based on a portfolio of actions. So some of them are best buys, things on which we can invest. Some of them will have to be investment based on taking some risk that we don't have all the evidence there. Maybe we should use the next year's Conference of Nutrition to do that.
Okay, very good. I think, Jennifer, you have your hand up next, and then I'll come. There's lots of hands going up. We'll get there.
Thank you. Jennifer Rigg, 1000 Days. I have a quick question to follow up on what many of you have mentioned in terms of the high-level panel report as an opportunity, and Anna most recently as something to seize and really grab hold of. So we're lucky today to have in the room many people, I think, who can help with that. So what can we immediately do to take that opportunity, to fill in the X, Y, and Z, to also make sure that the ongoing political processes post HLP, indeed, many of which, of course, are very much underway now, have that common voice. A few short months ago, Lawrence and others spoke on this topic in Brussels, and we didn't know that we could even come to this point. So kudos. I think this is a real-time example of the opportunity we have for working together, but what's our next step or series of steps? And then in a similar vein, after a wildly successful Nutrition for Growth event this Saturday, thanks to UK, Brazilian, and SIF leadership, what can we do in 2014, 2015, and 2016 and beyond? We're talking a lot about the architecture piece and mobilization, but I think we have a key opportunity immediately this week and beyond to then determine the next political 1,000 days for results, but also for the groundswell that we're all aiming for. If we could start to pin down some of those key points that will help us move forward, we will be able to get to those results. Thank you.
I've been particularly impressed by the Ethiopia experience and to me, having, I think, many in health and global health, we've toyed around with trying to get volunteers to do the grunt work of implementing programs, and Ethiopia has clearly taken the bull by the horns and put 30,000 community health volunteers on the state payroll. So I think this is this huge opportunity, and I would actually like to hear more about how did you generate the political will to do that. I also wanted to address, we heard that in fact one of the key ingredients in HIV to get the mobilization was that communities affected by HIV actually had a voice, particularly in the developed world. Is there a potential opportunity with a growing concern about overweight and obesity in the developed worlds to use that to also leverage more interest in nutrition globally? Because in fact, one of the huge challenges we faced, I think, in undernutrition is that, in fact, it's usually invisible and affecting people who, by definition, have no voice. And can we use that as an opportunity? That's a question I guess I would pose to all the panelists.
Very good, yes. And then
So just really quickly, I just want to acknowledge and thank Anna for that amazing recap. It was so on point in terms of the opportunities and challenges, and really acknowledge all the work that you and all your colleagues have done. Sorry to embarrass you on getting and pulling together the Nutrition for Growth event. I'm sure you have worked diligently behind the scenes, and we very much appreciate that. Your point about food systems is absolutely spot on. I would love to see the Lancet, a medical journal, take on this issue of food systems and how food systems are quite frankly, ruining the health of millions of people because of these issues of obesity and undernutrition. And with that, the role of the private sector, I have to agree with your Red Pepper article about, we've kind of been a little bit, as a advocacy community perhaps, or civil society, a little bit asleep at the wheel, or turning perhaps a blind eye to, the big ag investment in Africa. So.